18-year-old billionaire's son, Braden Mitchell, laughs out loud as a grieving mother describes her murdered son's final moments. The legendary judge Frank Caprio sits behind the bench, known for his compassion but unwavering when justice is mocked. But what Judge Caprio does next will remind you that money doesn't buy respect and that arrogance has consequences. This is Marcus Rivera's story, and it shows what happens when deadly entitlement meets real authority in a courtroom where character matters more than your trust fund. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're watching from, because we all deserve judges who stand up for victims when money tries to silence justice. March 2024. Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom in Providence stands as a temple of justice where fairness has been served for decades. The mahogany walls bear witness to countless cases, lined with leather-bound legal precedent books that speak to generations of judicial wisdom. An American flag stands sentinel in the corner, its presence a reminder that justice should be blind to wealth and status. The gallery overflows with media representatives, their cameras capturing every moment of what promises to be a defining case. Supporters of the Rivera family fill the front rows, their faces etched with grief and hope for accountability. The atmosphere carries the weight of tragedy and expectation. Fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the polished wooden surfaces, creating a stark contrast between light and darkness that mirrors the moral clarity about to unfold. Court reporters position their fingers over keyboards, ready to document every word of what will become a landmark moment in judicial history. The air feels thick with tension, as if the very room understands the gravity of the proceedings about to commence. The case before Judge Caprio bears the formal title, People v. Braden Ashworth Mitchell III. But the legal terminology cannot capture the human devastation at its core. The charges read like a catalog of callous disregard for human life. Vehicular manslaughter in the first degree, fleeing the scene of a fatal accident, hate crime enhancement based on evidence of class-based bias. Each charge carries the potential for decades behind bars, yet the defendant seems oblivious to the gravity of his situation. Marcus Rivera should have been starting his sophomore year at UCLA this fall. The 17-year-old scholarship student had earned his place through academic excellence and determination that his immigrant family instilled in him from childhood. His dream of becoming a doctor drove him to work catering jobs at exclusive events, saving every dollar for medical school expenses his scholarship wouldn't cover. Marcus represented everything admirable about the American dream: hard work, dedication, a desire to lift up others through service and healing. The crime occurred outside Meridian Country Club, where Newport Beach's elite gathered for their monthly charity gala. The irony cuts deep. An event supposedly dedicated to helping the less fortunate became the scene where privilege literally ran down opportunity. Security cameras captured every horrifying second of the incident that would shatter two families in completely different ways. The digital evidence shows Marcus navigating the crowded parking area after his catering shift, tired but satisfied, with another step toward his medical career goals. The collision happened at 11:47 p.m. on March 15th. Braden Mitchell's silver Maserati struck Marcus Rivera with enough force to throw the teenager 50 feet across the asphalt. The impact velocity, according to accident reconstruction experts, indicated the vehicle was accelerating rather than braking at the moment of contact. Tire marks on the pavement tell a story of deliberate action rather than tragic accident. The defendant fled immediately, leaving Marcus bleeding and calling for his mother as his life ebbed away in a country club parking lot. Evidence recovered from the scene paints a picture of premeditated malice. Text messages from Braden's phone, sent 30 minutes after the collision, revealed a chilling lack of remorse. Taught some poor kid a lesson tonight, followed by a laughing emoji. Additional messages to his social circle bragged about putting the help in their place. These digital confessions would prove that what happened to Marcus Rivera was no accident, but the deadly culmination of a lifetime of unchecked privilege and contempt for those deemed beneath his social status. The Rivera family sits in the front row of the gallery, their presence a stark reminder of the human cost of entitlement gone unchecked. Braden Ashworth Mitchell III enters the courthouse like he's attending a social gathering rather than facing murder charges. His designer suit costs more than most families spend on rent for 6 months. The charcoal gray fabric bears the subtle pinstripes of Italian craftsmanship, tailored to perfection by hands that have dressed royalty and billionaires. His blonde hair appears freshly styled by Beverly Hills professionals, not a strand out of place despite spending the night in the county lockup. The teenager carries himself with the practiced arrogance of someone who has never faced real consequences for his actions. His physical demeanor radiates entitlement from every pore. A constant smirk plays across his lips, as if the entire legal proceeding exists for his entertainment. His blue eyes scan the courtroom with the casual assessment of someone evaluating a restaurant rather than facing justice for taking a life. Braden checks his platinum Rolex repeatedly, a gesture that suggests his time is too valuable to waste on such trivial matters as accountability for murder. When photographers capture his image, he doesn't hide or show shame. Instead, he adjusts his tie and poses as if this moment will enhance rather than destroy his reputation. The whispered conversations with his legal team reveal his true character. While families grieve and justice hangs in the balance, Braden treats the moment as an opportunity for humor. His attorneys, each billing more per hour than Marcus Rivera could have earned in months, lean in to hear their client's commentary on the proceedings. Their forced smiles and nervous glances suggest even these highly paid professionals recognize the toxicity of their client's attitude. Braden's laughter punctuates these exchanges, drawing disapproving stares from court officers who have seen every type of defendant, but rarely encounter such blatant disrespect for the legal process. The Mitchell family history reads like a manual for buying immunity from consequences. Ashworth Mitchell Jr., the defendant's father, built his technology empire through innovation, but maintained it through strategic donations to political campaigns and judicial retirement funds. 3 generations of Mitchells have treated the legal system as another business transaction where the right price guarantees the desired outcome. Police reports from Braden's teenage years tell a consistent story of charges filed and mysteriously dismissed, assault cases settled with confidential payments to victims, academic misconduct buried under university donations that fund new buildings bearing the Mitchell name. Previous incidents reveal a pattern of escalating violence masked by family wealth. At 16, Braden hospitalized a classmate during a hockey game, but avoided charges when his father funded a new sports complex for the school. The following year brought a DUI arrest that disappeared after a substantial contribution to the Police Benevolent Fund. Academic plagiarism at an elite prep school vanished following a 7-figure donation that established the Mitchell Center for Academic Excellence. Each incident taught Braden that money could erase any mistake, no matter how serious or harmful to others. The psychological profile emerging from his behavior suggests a complete absence of empathy for others. Child psychologists who evaluated Braden during custody proceedings following his parents' divorce noted concerning traits: lack of remorse for hurting animals or other children, manipulation of adults through charm and his family's social status, an inability to form genuine emotional connections with peers or family members. These early warning signs, ignored or explained away by expensive therapists, culminated in the deadly collision that ended Marcus Rivera's life and dreams. Braden's narcissistic personality manifests in his belief that other people exist solely for his benefit or entertainment. The teenager views Marcus Rivera not as a human being with hopes and family who loved him, but as an obstacle that dared to occupy space reserved for his social betters. This fundamental inability to recognize the humanity in others transforms every interaction into a power dynamic where Braden must assert dominance through wealth, violence, or humiliation. The opening statements begin with prosecutor Sarah Chen outlining the state's case against Braden Mitchell. Her voice carries the weight of seeking justice for a young man whose dreams were crushed under the wheels of privilege. As she details the events of March 15th, describing how Marcus Rivera worked late into the night to fund his medical school aspirations, Braden releases an audible yawn. The sound echoes through the hushed courtroom like a slap across the face of decency. His head tilts back dramatically, eyes rolling toward the ceiling as if the recounting of a teenager's murder bores him beyond measure. Judge Caprio's eyebrows furrow slightly, the first indication that this defendant's behavior will not be tolerated indefinitely. The legendary jurist has presided over thousands of cases, treating each person who enters his courtroom with dignity while expecting the same respect in return. His reputation for compassion never extends to those who mock the legal process or show contempt for victims and their families. The judge's hands rest calmly on the bench, but his knuckles begin to whiten as Braden's disrespectful display continues. During the prosecutor's description of Marcus's academic achievements and community service, Braden turns to his lead attorney and whispers something that causes both men to suppress laughter. The gesture draws sharp looks from court officers positioned around the room. These seasoned professionals have witnessed every type of defendant behavior, from genuine remorse to calculated manipulation, but rarely encounter someone so brazenly dismissive of taking another person's life. Their expressions reflect disgust at the teenager's performance. The defense team's opening strategy becomes immediately apparent as they attempt to minimize the charges and their client's culpability. Lead counsel, Harrison Blackwell, whose hourly rate exceeds most annual salaries, presents a narrative of youthful indiscretion rather than calculated murder. He suggests that alcohol and poor judgment, common among teenagers, led to a tragic accident rather than intentional violence. Throughout this presentation, Braden nods approvingly, treating his attorney's words like a performance review rather than a desperate attempt to save him from life imprisonment. Judge Caprio maintains his composure while internally noting every instance of disrespect. His years on the bench have taught him to observe defendant behavior carefully, as these moments often reveal true character more clearly than prepared statements or coached testimony. The judge's patience, legendary throughout the legal community, stems from his belief that everyone deserves fair treatment regardless of their background or behavior. However, this patience has limits, especially when defendants mock victims or their grieving families. The first major display of entitlement occurs when Braden checks his expensive watch repeatedly during victim impact preparation. The gesture suggests that his time holds more value than the legal proceedings designed to hold him accountable for taking a life. When photographers from local media capture his image, instead of showing shame or attempting to hide, Braden straightens his tie and adjusts his posture as if posing for a society magazine rather than facing murder charges. His smile for the cameras reveals someone who believes negative publicity can be managed through family connections and strategic public relations campaigns. From the gallery, Ashworth Mitchell Jr. observes his son's behavior with evident approval rather than concern. The billionaire's slight nod when Braden dismisses the prosecutor's arguments suggests a family dynamic where legal troubles are viewed as temporary inconveniences rather than serious consequences. This paternal endorsement of courtroom disrespect reinforces patterns established throughout Braden's childhood, where money consistently erased accountability, and taught him that rules apply only to people without sufficient wealth to buy exemptions. Maria and Sofia Rivera occupy front-row seats, forced to witness their loved one's memory being treated as entertainment by the person who destroyed their family. Their presence serves as a constant reminder of the human cost of privilege run amok. The prosecution presents the security footage that captured Marcus Rivera's final moments. The large courtroom monitor displays grainy but clear images of the Meridian Country Club parking lot at 11:47 p.m. Marcus appears on screen, walking slowly after his catering shift, backpack slung over his shoulder, containing textbooks he planned to study before sleep. The timestamp shows him checking his phone, likely texting his mother that he would be home soon. Then Braden's silver Maserati enters the frame, accelerating rather than braking as it approaches the unsuspecting teenager. The moment of impact draws gasps from the gallery. Marcus's body launches through the air with sickening force, landing 50 feet away on the asphalt. The vehicle never stops. Brake lights never illuminate. The Maserati disappears from view as Marcus lies motionless, his dreams scattered across the pavement like the contents of his backpack. During this horrific display of violence, Braden Mitchell laughs. The sound cuts through the courtroom's stunned silence like a blade. His shoulders shake with mirth as he watches the replay of a young man's death. Judge Caprio's jaw tightens visibly. His hands grip the edges of the bench with increasing force as the defendant's reaction reveals the depth of his callousness. The judge has presided over countless vehicular homicide cases, watching families destroyed by tragic accidents and poor decisions. However, he has never encountered a defendant who finds entertainment in footage of their victim's final moments. The muscles in Judge Caprio's neck strain as, He maintains judicial composure while witnessing such blatant disregard for human life. Prosecutor Chen introduces the text messages recovered from Braden's phone, sent 30 minutes after he left, Marcus dying in the parking lot. The court clerk reads each message aloud in a steady voice that cannot mask their chilling content. Taught some poor kid a lesson tonight, followed by multiple laughing emojis. Showed the help what happens when they forget their place. Dad's lawyers will handle this like always. Each message draws visible reactions from the jury, their faces reflecting growing horror at the defendant's mindset. Braden grins proudly as his words are read to the courtroom. He turns toward the gallery where his parents sit, seeking their approval for messages that reveal his complete lack of remorse. His father nods slightly, as if praising his son for asserting dominance over someone deemed socially inferior. This exchange occurs directly in front of Maria Rivera, who covers her mouth to suppress sobs as she hears her son's death described as a lesson in social hierarchy. The prosecutor adds obstruction of justice charges based on additional evidence discovered during the investigation. Text messages show Braden coordinating with family attorneys to create alibis and destroy evidence before police could secure warrants. His phone contained deleted photos of the damaged Maserati and communications with body shop owners discussing off-the-books repairs. These digital breadcrumbs reveal a sophisticated cover-up operation that began within hours of Marcus's death. Judge Caprio's demeanor shifts perceptibly as each new piece of evidence reveals the calculated nature of both the crime and its aftermath. His reputation for treating all defendants with dignity stems from his belief that everyone deserves fair treatment regardless of their circumstances. However, this fundamental respect has never been tested by someone who shows such contempt for the legal process and victim's family. The judge's famous patience begins to show cracks as Braden continues to treat the proceedings as entertainment. Social media posts from Braden's friends flood the internet during court recesses, calling the trial a witch hunt against success and praising their friend for not backing down to jealous poor people. These messages, shared widely across platforms, demonstrate how privilege creates echo chambers where accountability becomes persecution and victims become obstacles to wealth's natural dominance. Sofia Rivera approaches the witness stand with trembling legs that threaten to buckle under the weight of grief and trauma. At 14 years old, she carries herself with a maturity forced upon her by tragedy, her small frame dwarfed by the imposing courtroom architecture. Her dark hair frames a face marked by sleepless nights and endless tears shed for the brother who promised to change their family's fortune through education and hard work. The bailiff adjusts the microphone to accommodate her height, a simple gesture that emphasizes how young she is to be testifying about such devastating loss. Her voice barely rises above a whisper as she begins to speak about Marcus, the brother who walked her to school every morning before his own classes began. She describes how he would quiz her on homework during their walks, turning education into a game that made learning feel like an adventure rather than a chore. Marcus never complained about the extra responsibility of caring for his younger sister, while their mother worked multiple jobs to keep their family afloat. Instead, he embraced the role of protector and mentor, promising Sophia that education would be their family's pathway to better opportunities. The courtroom falls silent as Sophia recounts the night Marcus died. She had been waiting up to ask for help with a chemistry assignment, knowing her brother would explain complex concepts in ways that made sense to her teenage mind. When the phone call came at 2:17 a.m., Sophia initially thought it was Marcus calling to say he would be working late again. Instead, she heard their mother's screams echoing through their small apartment as police delivered news that would shatter their world forever. The memory causes Sophia's voice to crack, her words becoming fragments of pain that pierce the silence. She speaks about Marcus's dreams with the reverence of someone who witnessed genuine dedication firsthand. Her brother studied medical textbooks during bus rides to work, highlighting passages about emergency medicine and trauma surgery. He wanted to become a doctor, not for prestige or money, but because he had seen how poverty affected healthcare access in their community. Marcus planned to return to their neighborhood after medical school, opening a clinic that would serve families like theirs regardless of their ability to pay. These dreams lived in notebooks filled with career plans and scholarship applications that now serve as painful reminders of potential destroyed by privilege and hatred. The most devastating moment comes when Sophia describes Marcus's promise about her education. He had calculated exactly how much money he needed to save from catering jobs to ensure she could attend college without student loans. Every weekend shift, every late night at country club events, every dollar earned carried the weight of his sister's future. Marcus kept a jar in their shared bedroom, where he deposited money specifically designated for Sophia's education, marking each contribution with notes about which semester it would fund. The jar remains untouched in their apartment, a shrine to brotherly love and sacrifice. As Sophia's testimony reaches its emotional peak, describing how she learned about her brother's death, the unthinkable happens. Braden Mitchell laughs. The sound erupts from his throat like poison, a sharp bark of amusement that cuts through the sacred space of grief and remembrance. His laugh echoes off the courtroom walls, seeming to multiply and amplify until it becomes the only sound in the universe. The jury members recoil as if physically struck. Court reporters freeze over their keyboards. Even the hardened bailiffs look stunned by such brazen cruelty. The laugh continues for 3 eternal seconds. Braden's head tilts back in genuine mirth, finding entertainment in a child's description of family devastation. His eyes sparkle with the same amusement he might show at a comedy show or amusing social media video. Complete silence follows. Sophia stops speaking mid-sentence. Maria Rivera's hand flies to her mouth. The temperature in the room seems to drop 20 degrees. Judge Caprio slowly rises from his chair. Judge Frank Caprio stands with the deliberate gravity of someone who has reached the absolute limit of judicial patience. His 70-plus years of life experience, decades on the bench, and reputation for compassionate justice all converge in this moment of moral clarity. The transformation from grandfatherly figure to righteous arbiter occurs in real time as his face hardens into an expression that has never appeared in his courtroom before. Every person present recognizes they are witnessing something unprecedented in his distinguished career. Mr. Mitchell, the words carry the weight of final judgment. Judge Caprio's voice cuts through the silence with surgical precision, each syllable delivered with controlled fury that makes the air itself seem to vibrate with tension. His eyes lock onto Braden's face with laser-like intensity, stripping away every layer of privilege and pretense until only the moral bankruptcy beneath remains visible. The judge's hands rest flat on the bench, steadying himself as he prepares to deliver words that will redefine this young man's understanding of consequences. Braden's perpetual smirk begins to falter for the first time since entering the courtroom. The teenager's confident demeanor wavers as he realizes the laughter that has protected him throughout his privileged life has finally crossed a line from which his family's money cannot rescue him. His blue eyes dart toward his legal team, seeking the reassurance that expensive attorneys have always provided when his behavior created problems. Instead, he finds lawyers whose faces reflect their own horror at their clients' actions and their recognition that damage control is no longer possible. Stand up. Judge Caprio's command reverberates through the courtroom with the authority of someone who has spent a lifetime serving justice. The 2 words contain decades of experience dealing with every type of defendant, from genuinely remorseful individuals seeking redemption to hardened criminals showing no regard for their victims. However, this moment represents something entirely different. Braden Mitchell has revealed himself as someone who finds entertainment in the destruction of innocence and the suffering of families destroyed by his actions. The defendant rises slowly, his movements lacking the casual arrogance that characterized his earlier behavior. For the first time, genuine uncertainty clouds his features as he begins to comprehend that this judge will not be intimidated by wealth or family connections. His expensive suit suddenly appears less like armor and more like a costume, inadequate for the reality now confronting him. The whispered conferences with his attorneys cease as even they recognize that legal maneuvering cannot address the fundamental character revelation that has just occurred. Judge Caprio begins to speak about privilege with the measured tone of someone who has observed its effects throughout his career. He addresses the courtroom about the responsibility that comes with advantages of birth and wealth, explaining how these gifts should inspire service to others rather than contempt for those with fewer opportunities. His words carry the wisdom of someone who has seen both the best and worst of human nature. delivered with the moral authority that comes from a lifetime of treating all people with equal dignity regardless of their social status. The judge's voice rises as he discusses the sanctity of human life and the equal value of every person who enters his courtroom. He speaks directly about Marcus Rivera's worth, not as measured by bank accounts or social connections, but by his character, dreams, and the love of family members who now sit in the front row, watching justice finally assert itself. Judge Caprio's words honor the victim, while simultaneously exposing the moral poverty of his killer, creating a stark contrast between genuine human value and the hollow privilege that money can purchase. The lecture continues as Judge Caprio addresses the pattern of Mitchell family behavior that enabled this tragedy. Judge Caprio's voice carries the full weight of judicial authority as he delivers the sentence that will define the remainder of Braden Mitchell's life. The court sentences you to 25 years to life in state prison. The words fall like hammer blows against an anvil, each syllable precisely measured and delivered with the gravity befitting such a momentous decision. The judge's decades of experience have prepared him for this moment when compassion must yield to justice, and when society's need for protection outweighs any consideration of the defendant's youth or family circumstances. No possibility of parole for 20 years. Judge Caprio continues with unwavering resolve, his voice growing stronger as he exercises the full discretionary power vested in his position. The sentence reflects not only the heinous nature of the crime, but also the defendant's complete lack of remorse and his contemptuous behavior toward the victim's family. Every legal precedent, every guideline, and every consideration of justice supports the maximum penalty allowable under law for someone who has shown such callous disregard for human life and dignity. The courtroom erupts in chaos as the reality of the sentence penetrates the Mitchell family's bubble of privilege and denial. Braden's mother, Patricia Mitchell, releases a piercing scream that echoes off the mahogany walls like the cry of a wounded animal. Her perfectly manicured hands fly to her face as she realizes that money cannot purchase her son's freedom from the consequences of his actions. Years of buying solutions to problems have not prepared her for this moment, when judicial authority supersedes financial influence and character matters more than bank accounts. Ashworth Mitchell Jr. bolts upright from his seat, his face flushed red with rage and disbelief. "This is outrageous!" he shouts toward the bench, his voice carrying the entitled indignation of someone unaccustomed to being told no. "We'll appeal this travesty. My attorneys will have you removed from the bench." His threats reveal the mindset that created his son's moral bankruptcy, the belief that judges can be intimidated or purchased like any other commodity in his business empire. The billionaire's fury stems not from concern for justice, but from the unprecedented experience of powerlessness in the face of genuine authority. Judge Caprio continues with additional conditions that strip away every advantage Braden's wealth might provide during incarceration. Furthermore, I'm recommending you serve your sentence in general population. No special accommodations. No protective custody unless your life is in immediate danger. These words carry particular significance in a prison system where crimes against children and displays of privilege make inmates targets for violence from fellow prisoners who have nothing left to lose and no patience for entitled rich kids. Braden's face transforms from arrogant confidence to pale terror as the implications of general population placement become clear. His expensive education never included courses on prison survival, and his privileged upbringing provided no preparation for an environment where wealth means nothing and respect must be earned through entirely different currencies. The teenager's hands begin to shake as he realizes that his name, family connections, and trust fund cannot protect him from 2 decades among hardened criminals who will view him as both entertainment and target. The judge's final words carry the weight of poetic justice delivered by someone who has dedicated his life to serving all people equally. "Mr. Mitchell, you wanted to laugh? Let's see how funny you find the next 2 decades. The statement encapsulates the complete reversal of fortune, from courtroom arrogance to prison vulnerability, from social superiority to institutional humiliation. Judge Caprio's words promise that the entertainment Braden found in others' suffering will be replaced by his own struggle for survival in an environment where laughter comes at the expense of the weak and privileged. Bailiffs move swiftly. to restrain Braden as the reality of his situation overwhelms his composure. The courtroom video spreads across social media platforms with unprecedented velocity, accumulating millions of views within the first 6 hours of posting. The footage capturing Braden's laughter during Sophia's testimony and Judge Caprio's powerful response becomes a cultural phenomenon that transcends typical viral content. News outlets from major networks to independent bloggers share the clip with headlines celebrating judicial courage in the face of entitled privilege. The hashtag Justice for Marcus trends globally as viewers express overwhelming support for Judge Caprio's handling of a defendant who embodied everything wrong with wealth inequality and social privilege. Public reaction reveals a society hungry for accountability among the privileged class who typically escape consequences through family connections and expensive legal representation. Comment sections overflow with praise for Judge Caprio's refusal to be intimidated by billionaire threats and his commitment to treating all victims with equal dignity. Viewers share personal stories of injustices they have witnessed when wealth purchased immunity from legal consequences, making Braden's downfall feel like vindication for countless overlooked victims. The case becomes a symbol of hope that the justice system can still function properly when guided by judges who prioritize character over bank accounts. Braden's adjustment to prison life without privilege or protection proves as brutal as Judge Caprio predicted. The teenager who once laughed at others' suffering discovers that correctional facilities operate according to entirely different social hierarchies, where wealth means nothing and survival depends on respect earned through actions rather than inherited through family name. His first weeks in general population teach him lessons about vulnerability and fear that his expensive education never covered. Fellow inmates view him as both entertainment and target, ensuring that every day brings new reminders of his powerlessness. The Mitchell family empire crumbles under the weight of public scrutiny and corporate accountability. Major technology companies cancel contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars, citing concerns about associating their brands with a family that raised a remorseless killer. Ashworth Mitchell Jr. finds himself ostracized from elite social circles that once competed for his attention and donations. The billionaire's threats against Judge Caprio backfire spectacularly as legal ethics boards launch investigations into his attempts to intimidate judicial officers. Corporate sponsors distance themselves from Mitchell Industries, while investors withdraw funding from projects associated with the toxic family brand. The Rivera family begins their long journey toward healing, with the knowledge that Marcus's death was not dismissed or minimized by a system that often favors wealth over justice. Maria Rivera establishes the Marcus Rivera Memorial Scholarship Fund, providing educational opportunities for immigrant students pursuing careers in medicine and public service. The scholarship program receives donations from around the world as people inspired by Marcus's story contribute to ensuring his dreams live on through others who share his dedication to helping their communities. Sofia Rivera, though forever changed by trauma, finds purpose in speaking about her brother's legacy and the importance of holding privileged individuals accountable for their actions. The legal precedent established by Judge Caprio's handling of the case influences courts nationwide, as other judges cite his decision when dealing with entitled defendants who show contempt for victims in legal proceedings. Law schools incorporate the case into curricula examining judicial authority and the intersection of wealth and justice. The phrase Caprio standard enters legal terminology, describing judicial responses that prioritize victim dignity over defendant privilege. Young lawyers study the transcript as an example of how moral clarity can guide legal decisions when money attempts to purchase immunity from consequences. Judge Caprio's legacy grows stronger through his demonstration that true judicial authority stems from character rather than fear of powerful interests. His approach reinforces the principle that courtrooms serve as sacred spaces where every human life holds equal value regardless of social status or family wealth. The case becomes a defining moment in his distinguished career, proving that compassion and justice can coexist when guided by unwavering moral principles.